Hello, friends. I'm Kerry, and this is my wife, Trell, and we're going to try and offer you some white haired wisdom today.
We hope so.
That's right. Now, in my younger days, back after my first wife died in the early 2000s, I felt so compelled to write a book, and everybody started looking at me like I was a crazy man because for over 30 years of my life, I'd been a boxing coach. And so they didn't think that I had any literary skills, and they were right. But I still felt like the Lord was compelling me to write a book. And so today, on this edition of White Haired Wisdom, I spent thousands of dollars learning how to do this, my friends. And we're going to give it to you absolutely free. We're not going to ask for nothing from you because we know that the Lord has a plan and a purpose for your life, and He wants you to share your story. And we're going to tell you how to do it today. Now, I can't tell you how to go find someone that's going to give you $1 million contract and publish it for you, but I can teach you how to write and self-publish your book right now, today. And Trell, I know that you have produced a ton of content over your lives, specifically music. How many CDs have you done over the years?
I've done 8. Some of them were with my family and some of them were solo. But you always have a whole symphony of people involved. And I say that because it reminds me of Heaven's Symphony when you get the engineer and the musicians and the backup singers and the person that wrote the song. And everybody's involved and you put them all together and it works out to be something symphonic and beautiful.
Yeah, but it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
You've been working on one for a couple of years right now.
Yes, I have, and we're hoping that it's going to be done pretty soon.
Yeah, and it's because of no fault of our own. We're 700 miles away from the person that's producing it, and Trell has done all of the work, has done all of the vocals. We're just has paid for the project, and hasn't got her CD back in her hands yet. So I think in the very near future, if somebody out there likes the idea of wanting to know how to produce your own CD and do it in warp speed,
Don't ask me.
yeah, but she can absolutely walk you through the process of how to do it. And so I want to share with you, Trell, may I share with them today kind of my story and how I got involved in writing?
Well, I think that'd be wonderful. And y'all, any minute, I may ask dumb questions because I know nothing about writing a book.
Yeah, and I didn't, and and from the literary point, I'm not gifted, but that doesn't matter. You don't have to be gifted to write a book, and I'll explain why in a few minutes. These are just a few of the books that I've written. But back in around 2004, my first wife had died in '01, and I was going to church at Prestonwood Baptist Church in Dallas, and there was a fellow there by the name of Zig Ziglar. I was in his Sunday school class, and he was a famous motivational speaker. I went to Zig one Sunday morning. Well, before I went to Zig, I came back to Nashville, and I went to dinner with a couple writer friends that had published stuff, and I went to a couple other people that were writing, and everybody discouraged me. Everybody looked at me like I was crazy. What the heck? You're going to write a book? You're an old boxing coach, And it was like, give this stupid idea up. And honestly, folks, out of all the books I've written, I haven't made any serious money at all. I still get a little royalty check every month, but it's small. But the one thing that my first book that I'll tell you about in a moment, Fight the Good Fight, did was it opened up a door that actually put me on television. It was because of this book. I was on a television program that someone told me that I needed to produce a TV program. So you don't know where it's going to lead. So anyway, Latrell, I was at the point where I said, I'm going to give this book idea up. And one Sunday morning, I'm not a shy guy, but after church, I went to Zig Ziglar, and he was so, internationally known that I felt kind of meek and mild speaking to him. I said, Zig, I want to write a book, but everybody keeps telling me I'm crazy. And I said, I've got one chapter here. Would you take it and read it and tell me what you think? And he took the chapter home, and I went home, worked that week, and I thought, wow, I'm going to go back next Sunday and ask him about that. And he didn't seek me out, so I had to seek him out. And I found him, and I said, Zig, I gave you a chapter last week, and I had my head bowed down. I thought he was going to say, yeah, you got no business writing a book. And I said, and he said, yeah, and I read it. He said, I said, well, should I trash the whole idea? I was just going to throw my idea in a trash can. He said, no. He said, you're a good storyteller, and you've got a story to tell. Go write your book, and when you do, I'll write the foreword to the book for you.
Well, that's a surprise, I'm sure. And it was wonderful because Zig Ziglar was already a very famous, well-known writer and speaker.
That's right. And so I went to him and wrote the whole book, and his secretary, Lori Majors, and I communicated back and forth. She still works for the Ziglar organization. I had Zig actually on our television program before he died, 8 or 10 years ago. But here was my very first book, Fight the Good Fight, foreword by Zig Ziglar. Now, this was my story of my life in professional boxing. And I'd met everybody. I'd been through so many things, and I wanted to share my testimony in writing that book. It took me 2 years. And friends, I promise you I could have written that book in 2 months if I'd known what I was doing. But here's what happened. I sat down. I can remember I owned a small business in those days, and I just started a new business, and I wasn't very busy. So I would go to White Rock Lake in Dallas and sit out there and just write that summer when I wasn't working much. And over 2 years it took me to write this. And I wasn't a gifted writer. So what I had to do is I had to come back and find friends. One of the friends that told me I shouldn't be a writer, I paid him to edit. I paid another friend who was a law professor to edit the book. And that law professor, after I finished this book, wrote on fightnews.com that this was a book that every boxing aficionado ought to read because of the stories I had in there. But it was difficult, and it took me 2 years, but when I finished it, Zig wrote the foreword. Now, the first question that comes up is, where do you find a publisher?
Probably. My first question would be, how do you write it before you find a publisher, right? Because you have to write the book first.
Okay.
And I was thinking a while ago that the very first thing you said was you felt like God laid it on your heart to write a book. So where does that desire come from? There's probably some little something speaking in your ear or speaking in your mind that's leading you and telling you you've got this inside you. That's where the seed is planted. That's where it starts from the beginning. But then, how?
So I had a story I felt like telling, and I'm glad you asked. We'll go back to the publisher thing after we finish writing, okay? So I sat down that summer, must have been '04 or something, started writing at White Rock Lake in Dallas, Texas. And I wasn't using a computer. I think I was longhanding. But here's the thing. How do you write the book? Well, this was my personal story. So if I were going to write the book today, what I would do is I would go and sit down and write out 10 questions that somebody might ask me about my story. Okay?
10 questions. And then you figure out what those answers would be.
Well, then I would take those 10 questions and make them the titles of my book.
Like the chapters.
I'd make the chapter of the book. So, how did you get into boxing, or something like whatever it would be. Why were you so angry as a child? So whatever the question was, take and make a list of your 10 most important questions that you think somebody would ask you about your story or your book, and those are potentially the titles of your book. So you have an outline, right? Mm-hmm. So you start with number 1, you write on that one, then you go to number 2, then you go to number 3, and then eventually you'll have them all finished. Well, you say, well, I can't write it all. I can't type. I can't, what do they call it today? I think when we went to school, they called it typing.
Dictation?
No, when they go to keyboarding, I think they have to take a course called keyboarding now because everybody's keyboarding on the computer. But since she mentioned dictation, the Lord might have spoken to her that what you can do, you've got 10, you got to write your 10 titles down. What you can also do if you don't want to sit down and write is you dictate, you record. Every phone's got a recorder on it now. We used to have tape recorders that you'd push a little button and it would start taping, but every phone has a taping device on it, and you can hit tape, and you'll basically you'll speak your book, speak your chapters, just write them down. All right, then when you're finished with that, you'll have an MP3 that you can send to somebody to transcribe it. And when it's transcribed, it will need editing. Then you can have somebody edit it. All right, now, so you say, well, where would I get it transcribed? Well, there's a company called rev.com on the internet that I've used for years to transcribe our television program. Whenever we produce a TV show at In Your Corner, we have to transcribe that so that people that are hearing
Captions.
closed caption, we have to transcribe it into closed captioning, and those that are hearing impaired can read what's being said. So, number one, write your 10 titles down. If you don't want to write, if you don't feel like writing it, dictate it. Then you've got to get it transcribed, and then you take that document and have somebody like Lady Trell, who she's only been married to me for 9 months tomorrow, and she'll tell you straight away she has to correct everything I write.
It is true. It is important to have somebody who can make the story flow, even when you've got raw information that you put down, and it maybe is spectacular, maybe very interesting and gripping, but it still has to flow. So having someone to be able to come in and do sentence structure and do some corrections and just rearrange a little bit of the verbiage or something make an entire difference.
It does. And I don't care. I don't care that, I'm thrilled that she's here to be able to do that for me. I don't care that it's not perfect when I'm through, because I can pay somebody else to fix it. And you can too. I do pay for this thing called Grammarly that you can get on your computer that corrects a lot of your writing, because I don't want to sound like an idiot. I do that a lot when I open my mouth, but when I'm writing something on social media, I don't want to sound like Zeke from Cabin Creek. I don't want to sound like a hick. So if you want it to read better, you got to get somebody to correct it, okay?
It's okay. It's okay if we look like and talk like hicks, but we don't want to sound like it in a book.
That's absolutely correct. Now, all right, so once you finish it, and you're going to learn that there's some stuff there that you won't learn how to know exactly how to do, forwards, and then once you finish your document, you'll have to get somebody to help you with forwards and chapters and putting all that stuff together. But it's so easy. So what I did was I wrote from a Christian author's perspective, and I wanted a good-looking book, and sadly something has spilled on this one, and I couldn't find another one to fight the good fight, but it was my first book, and it's my life story. And I wanted it to look good. I wanted a good-looking book. That book looks as good as any book and paperback is so much less expensive. That book looks as good as any book that you'll see on a shelf. And what I did, friends, was after I finished my book and paid someone to edit me, and all you got to do is Google, editor or help me write a book. There'll be all kinds of people like Luttrell that can help you edit it, but put things together, put it in a good format for you. And then I went to a company called Xulon Press, Xulon, and Xulon is a Christian publishing company that will help Christian authors write a good-looking book. And, you can even see their logo there. But they charge me, I can't remember, it was 05 or 06 when I wrote this, 2005 or 06. Seemed like they charged me a couple of $1,000, and some lady sent me some information about a book that she had the other day. She wanted to be on my television program, and I look at a lot of authors' material, and she wanted to be on the television program, and she sent me a book from Xulon, and she says, would you like to see the trailer? And I said, sure, send me the trailer. and she sent me a little trailer, and basically what somebody did was they took pictures of the book and put music underneath it so that it looked more professional. So they're going to have packages that you can buy to create a good book, okay? Now, here's the deal. You don't have to go through Xulon. After I went through Xulon and paid them $2,000, $2,500, whatever it was, they got me a good book, but they didn't get distribution. You need distribution. And so they got me a book, but they didn't help me distribute the book. So I found that after I did this, that you can go to Amazon.com. They have a site called CreateSpace, and every book that I've published after Fight the Good Fight, I've published through my own company and published it right on Amazon. And it CreateSpace. So go to CreateSpace.com. Once you get your document ready, you have to get it in a format that can be uploaded so that they can, lay the book out, and they'll give you a book this very book has been printed on Amazon after Xulon and looks no different it's the same book. It's printed the same way.
Perfect.
So then I wrote this little book here called How to Box, Training for Boxing, and since that's my background, and it's just a simple, almost like a little booklet, really, but this is my bestseller. Since I'm a boxing coach, I have a YouTube site that's got 14,000 followers, and I don't even put any more content on it. I haven't done it in years. And I've got videos over there that I've had over 1 million people watch. Well, when I put this on Amazon and promoted it a little bit, it was an Amazon bestseller for that category, whatever sports or boxing, whatever it was. But I have a bestseller, so I can promote that. Now, what I did do also, Trell, are there any questions you have that you think the audience might ask before?
I was thinking about this book right here. Aside from writing the book, the information in it is probably good not only for guys but for girls too, because if you know how to defend yourself and how to fight and just self-defense, that's probably a good book.
It's a good book, and you go to Amazon and get it for a couple bucks. But let me give you some advice. Latrell's first husband, John, was a police officer, and he did the wise thing. He always carried something in his pocket in case somebody messed with him. I started to learn how to box when I was a young man, and then when I got older, people started using guns and knives. So don't get me wrong, we live in a dangerous era. Boxing gave me a tremendous amount of confidence. I don't believe I can whip anybody on the planet anymore. I used to think I could whip everybody, but I could defend myself.
Well, that comes with white-haired wisdom and knowing.
Yeah, knowing how to avoid it. I'm not going to go out and, poke the bear or grab a rattlesnake by the tail. But, if the need arises, we are going to defend ourselves, or we're going to run like crazy if we can, fear or flight, whatever. But yeah, and that's a former life. I have a good friend. It's a movie producer that I coached for about a year just because he was trying to lose weight. But my goal now with Latrell is to share the gospel, tell people about Jesus Christ around the world. Now, I've written 2 books that say, this one is called Create Your Own Book This Weekend. And so what we've done is we've written a couple that go right through step by step on how to write and publish your book. This is on Amazon, and I'm almost certain that I've got it on there for free. Not the book. If you want the physical book, I would have to pay to send it to you. If you want the physical book, they will charge, I think it's $2.99 if you want the physical book. But I'm almost positive that you can go on there and get Create Your Own Book This Weekend and How to Box free. I think I've got those set up under.
You can download them?
So you can download the ebook and read it for free. And we put a lot of our material out. We give, Trell gives a lot of our music away free. We give a lot of our content away free because we want to share the good news of Jesus Christ dying, burying, and then coming back to life. That's the good news because he did it to save you. He did it to save us from our sins. And when we ask him to come in and be a part of our lives, then He saves us from eternal death and eternal punishment, and then we spend eternity with Him. And I believe that He is soon coming back. But the first thing I would do is encourage you, if you don't know Jesus Christ, to give your life to Him, and then do as much as you can to give back to others. The last book I want to show you is actually a book it's a collaborative book. It's a book that Becky Joey Oates and I and Carol Aiken and several others collaborated on. It's called Addiction Knockout, and this is the workbook for our Addiction Knockout program. So there are a dozen tapes, DVD tapes that go with this book. We wrote this book and published it as a way for people to use it like
Like a workbook?
like a workbook, like Addiction Knockout. Is in jail ministries, prison ministries, and different ministries around the country. And so this is available. It's not free, but it's available on Amazon.com too. And if you have an interest in starting a group to help people overcome addiction, we want to help you. So what have I missed that somebody might need to get started writing a book?
Well, I don't know about getting started writing the book. First of all, you've got to have the idea, and like I said, that comes from somewhere within and somewhere without and somewhere up. But I was thinking what you said a while ago. You think these are free online, and it just so happens that I would know that because before I met him, I checked online what his background was and what all things that he had done, and I read some of the excerpts out of his book because I wanted him to be a good guy if I was going to meet him, and my nephew introduced us.
So is this before you met me? Before you actually physically met me, you started stalking me to see?
That's right. I stalked him. I did. I pulled up his programs and watched some of them. I listened to some of his preaching, and I read some of the things in his books. So I do know that you can get them. You can find them. And like he said, not all of them are free, but there are some up there that are free, and they're very good and well worth reading.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Trell. Well, if we can help you at all, folks, we want to help. And a bunch of people have written books that have come. I used to do a Saturday morning workshop about 3 hours long called Create Your Own Book This Weekend. And I would teach people how to write a book in a weekend. And that's basically what we've run through here. But if you're curious, just start writing it, and then go to createspace.com. That's an Amazon company. Just look up how to put some of these things together, and it's really not that difficult. I promise you, it's not that hard. And for the things that you can't do, you can always pay someone else to do them. Now, Trell, is there anything you want to share in the way of a testimony or song before we close today?
No, I'm just thankful for everything that we are available to do. I'm thankful all of our lives, your life, my life, and you out there, your lives, because there's been many things that have come your way that were by no accident. And so anything that we've been permitted, allowed, and made available to witness, to teach, to preach, to share in any way, it has been a blessing from God. And I pray that you're blessed in that way too, that you get that inspiration from God, because it comes from everywhere.
Yeah. And friends, I do want to update you on one thing. We have an opportunity to take our In Your Corner program to 41 million homes of men. We have an opportunity to go on 2 sports networks. We've been, over the last 12 years, we're on NRB TV and the Daystar TV network. We're still on NRB. We're no longer on Daystar. But we're going to go to a secular audience, and it's going to cost us some money. But that's going to start up in about a month, and I would just pray that you would pray with us. And the way that you can help us is to like and subscribe the White-Haired Wisdom program. We're trying to we feel like the Lord has called Latrell and I to spend the rest of our lives sitting in a studio and producing content to point people to Jesus Christ. So we have the In Your Corner television program. We're going to have Latrell on some of the programs that we do on NRB, and then she and I are going to be doing the White-Haired Wisdom, and we're going to continue doing this. And we want to grow our ministry around the world, and the way we're doing that is on YouTube and Rumble and places like that, as well as on television. The Lord said, "Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature." Doesn't mean that we all have to get on an airplane and go become a missionary to Africa, but as you're going, and we just feel like the Lord's called us to do this. So